In an extremely stark view on end of life autonomy, actor Kevin James argues that only God should determine when a person's life ends. Criticized some by his anti choice stance, James's position challenges evolving norms in a society that increasingly values individual decision making in end of life matters. The complexities of life support, the concept of quality of life, and compassionate choices all seem absent to James. However, in a world where divine intervention remains unseen, the practicality of James' reactionary position seems outdated and dangerous. This story is from lifenews.com by Terry Schiavo, Life and Hope Network on January 25th, 2024.
Oh, I really thought that the whole Terry Schiavo story had been buried a long, long ago. And I thought it was really, really weird that we would have like a celebrity today kind of commenting on a story that was resolved literally 20 years ago. It's just really weird. I'm not sure that anybody even remembers what the Terry Schiavo case was about. So I had a little quick rundown of it here I was going to do for everybody. Terry Schiavo had a heart attack at the age of 26. She was clinically dead for actually quite a while. And as a result, she lost oxygen to the brain, resulting in massive damage, and she went into a permanent vegetative state. For the next 2 years, doctors did everything they could for her, but they diagnosed that she would never, ever come back out of the state that she was in. So after 2 years of literally doing everything in this guy, that her husband did everything he could for her. And he made the decision to pull her feeding tube since it was up to him. He was the next of kin. Her parents took him to court, got a stay, and then a long legal battle ensued. Eventually, the husband won. He pulled the feeding tube, but then Governor Jeb Bush steps in and he puts a stay on it. And he saves her, and then when he loses in court, his brother, the president George W., stepped in and put a stay to it. In the end, this whole three-ring circus went through 14 appeals, numerous legal motions, petitions, hearings in the Florida courts, 5 suits in federal district courts, extensive political intervention at the levels of Florida state legislature through the governor, U.S. Congress, President George Bush, and 4 denials from the Supreme Court of the United States. That's how important or crazily important this case was back in its day. The GOP took it up as a big cause. They even had a political scandal over it from a memo that one of theirs, I don't remember if it was a representative or a senator, one of his memos was made public saying that they needed to milk this incident as much as they could to get votes for their side by championing her cause. In the end, the husband did win. They pulled their feeding tube. She did pass away. They did an autopsy, and she only had like half of her brain left. The rest of it had been replaced by fluid, and she never was going to come out of it. And if you read this article, it makes it sound like she actually had a chance of being a normal person again, and it just wasn't going to happen, unfortunately. And what was really sad about her case is the way that like the GOP milked it to get votes. And I feel like a lot of people took advantage of her death. It was really, really sad. So Phoebe, do you want to add to, now that I've kind of ran down the story, what do you think about the whole thing?
I was quite young at the time of this. I was 11 years old when this came, and I remember it was on British news as kind of like an only in America story. And I remember the ITV news correspondent Robert Moore going, "Only in America would you see on like a Saturday night, Sunday morning legislation pointed at one person."
One person.
Literally one person.
They called Congress back for vacation.
The Congress was in recess and it was called back. It was like it was like the middle of August or something. I don't remember exactly when it was. But I'll always remember the line Robert Moore said. "And today the President of America did one thing that no other president has ever done, signed a bill specifically for one person. Only in America would this kind of thing happen, where religious conservatism meets medical ethics. I don't understand why this case ended up doing what it did, because it's a clear violation of the separation of powers doctrine, because it's the judiciary being overruled by the legislature, then being overruled by the executive, which is a separation of powers issue to begin with. But then I don't actually understand why they were getting involved in the first place. I just don't understand it. This whole story was full of things where I just gone, I don't understand this part of it. And then I read this article about somebody I've never heard of speaking on a podcast and an organization I've never heard of about a case I'd forgotten about. So why is this even news? Why is some celebrity, quote unquote, talking about a case that's been ancient history for a long time? I don't get it. But the article itself is gratuitous. The article itself is misleading. And the article itself diminishes the legitimate argument that if you take out God, what do you have here? At the end of the day, the argument, if you strip away God, is, does another person have a right to ask another person, kill me?
Clayton?
Well, I guess I'll start off by addressing Kevin James.
First of all, who is Kevin James?
The celebrity. I love seeing people use their platform to help other people in need. Like that, let's full stop right there. I love seeing that. It's refreshing. And now that I've said something positive, let's get to the bullshit. So before I get more into what Kevin was saying, let's talk about Bobby Schindler, the guy who was pretty much organizing all this stuff. He's pretty much the actual subject of the article. So in Bobby's statement, he says, it's refreshing to hear someone in Hollywood speak on behalf of our medically defenseless. So far, we're in agreement. And then he says, especially in this pro-death culture. Let me stop you right there, Bob. Can I call you Bob? These people are so freaking unbearable. Why insert that into this conversation? Like, can we have a single discussion about anything without somebody calling attention to their made up culture that they're crusading against? Cancel culture, woke culture, death culture, which I've never heard of before I read this article. Just why?
Aren't you death positive? Aren't you,
I am
part of the
death
positive death culture movement that wants to, kill everything in sight? Isn't that what we all do here, all four of us? Aren't you part of the death cult?
So Bobby continues, it is encouraging that in this cancel culture, buzzword, a well-respected celebrity with an enormous fan base dares to speak the truth, and that it should only be our divine creator who decides when a person's life ends. So for anybody that couldn't tell, Phoebe, you hinted at this. The news site is called Life News. It's a right-leaning conservative outlet rated by Media Bias Fact Check as a questionable source. Shock. So I'm not surprised that there's no pushback for any of these statements made in the article, but that's why we're here. I, for one, don't want God or gods involved in my medical care. God doesn't decide when I die because a figment of my doctor's imagination shouldn't play a role in how I'm treated. And I strongly encourage people to talk to your family, let it be known how you wish for your body, your remains, what remains of you when you're partially here. Let them know how you wish to be treated in the case of an emergency. And if I'm being kept alive for a while, medical professionals don't see me coming back, and I'm a strain on my loved ones, let me go. Don't get it twisted. If I'm not a burden, give me a fighting chance. But please don't leave any of it to the sky wizard. Because, even as far as their beliefs go, he put me in the hospital to begin with. So I'll say good on Paul Blart for using this platform to fight for people in need. but both his motivation and his execution can use a lot of work. Infidel, what you got?
I have no doubt that Kevin James is sincere when he's taking this position. Now, unfortunately, sincerity doesn't get you very far in the real world when it comes down to sincerity meeting reality. The truth is, he's a good Catholic, and the Catholic's position on suicide in general is quite specific. And one reason is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. They followed Jesus, and Jesus died by suicide by cop. I mean, really, when it gets down to it, he made that choice. He made the decision to do that. So when you're supporting, a Messiah who made a choice, and we look back and there are people in history who have chosen to die for whatever reasons they believe, to martyr themselves. Suicide was really not that big of a deal in a lot of their minds until about the 3rd or 4th century. Now, having said that, I have a very strong position, and I agree with something Blayton said, and that is, I want a society that protects those that can't protect themselves. And if people are sick and in harm, I believe that we need to do things as a society for their betterment. Universal health care, anyone? Oh, wait, I doubt that's not what they're talking about. But we're not talking about the Terry Schiavo case is a perfect example of someone who was being watched after by her husband. There is a line of choices of who gets to control if there's no living will there. Now, I spent close to 2 years planning to die, and it's a very serious thing for the family, and for someone to think that they can take away, because he's looking at this as that it's God's right. Well, he has every right. Mr. James, you have every right in the world to have your family bring you to the bitter end if that's what you want. But don't take away my right and the rights of other people to make a different decision than you. This goes back once again to a religious view being not enough that I can or can't do something, but that you can't either. And that is where Kevin James needs to wake up and realize that maybe he's better off in sitcoms and, Comedy Hour and maybe a podcast, not making life and death decisions for other people who thought about it and made those decisions their own. To me, this is just somebody else trying to get some publicity, making some popularity by dragging something up because, they're losing on the pro-life end. And I think they're just trying to shift things a little bit to death with dignity at this point. Kelly?
Yeah, and I think they're using James here as he's a good Christian, he's a celebrity, so what he has to say about right to life has got to be good, right? And that's like me saying, Daniel Radcliffe, he's an atheist. Man, he was great as a boy wizard, so he should know everything about right to life. And that's just a ridiculous idea, And especially
get back on that train, will you? Get back on that train.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about a case that's like literally 20 years old, And I think it goes to show that it's even mentioned in the story about having a living will and making sure that you have one. Phoebe, you would probably be in a unique position of all of us to talk about something like that. And what do you think about? What does the panel think about the importance of having a legal living will? And maybe Phoebe, you can illuminate us a little bit more on that.
Depends what you mean by living will. There's no such legal term as living will. It's called an advance directive.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's my bad.
So an advance directive is what you set out that will happen to you in certain cases of either catastrophic injury, terminal illness, or other similar incurable conditions that occur to you. This can be that you want treatment to continue forever until you die. Or it can be no treatment, full stop. Or it can be a halfway house. you can, in these advanced directives, say, I agree in advance to take part in experimental medical experimentation if there is a possibility of the improvement of my life. You can also say in them, I refuse all medical treatment that are experimental. So it depends upon what you want. Everybody, in my opinion here, should be, quote, death positive. Not as in you're pro-death, but you should not fear death. Do not be afraid to talk to your loved ones about death. It's one of two things that are certain in this world, the other one being taxes. I can't remember who I'm misquoting there. But there are three things, in my opinion, that you should have. You should have a will, you should have an advance directive, and you should have a safe, known place where they are stored. Whether that be with your attorney, whether that be in the family safe, whether that be under your pillow. Make sure your loved ones know where it is, make sure you know where it is, and make sure you update it on a regular basis. If you want to be an organ donor and your family don't know about it and your organs go kaput, they can be useless. Me personally, my spinal column and my brain, I have set up to have that donated. My wife, she knows about that. And I do, even though I'm not that old, do have an advance directive in case I have a car crash or I crash my motorcycle. My wife said, you're mad having a motorcycle. I said, yeah, but I live once. But I don't want to live that life in a position where I'm unable to function in a way that is of any useful benefit to myself. That's just me. But me personally, I can't stomach, this is just me personally, asking someone else to kill me. I can't personally do that. If you can, that's up to you. But I could never put a doctor in a position to say, please euthanize me. I could never do that. But that's just me. Other people are happy, and medical professionals are happy to take on that position. But me personally, my own internal compass says I cannot ask anyone else to kill me. I can refuse treatment, yes. And I can die, but I can't have someone else take my life. I can't put someone in that position. It's not a religious thing. It's I could not ask anybody else, please kill me. Mm-hmm. That's just my position.
That'd be hard for me too. Bladen?
I just want to help you out with your quote earlier. I don't know who originally said it. I know it's a Marvin Gaye song where he says there's three things that are for sure. It's taxes, death, and trouble. Those things are going to come.
I'll let Marvin Gaye take credit for it, man.
I'll give it to Marvin Gaye.
He deserves it.
Yeah. So speaking about advanced directives, I was actually a medical assistant working in the ER a few years ago. We had an elderly patient who was crashing. And as he was going, I was called up to apply CPR. We had our team in there. We're doing all this stuff. And as I'm pushing, someone comes in and says, hey, have you guys read his advanced directive? His daughter, who cares for him, the only living family he has already stated that we're not supposed to be sustaining. When he goes, he goes. So imagine me pushing on this man's chest and just looking him in his eyes and realizing that, okay, I have to stop. I can't do anything here. That was his right. That was the right of his family. It wasn't my right to say, oh no, I'm saving him. I'm already here. I'm doing this. I can't let this man go. I'm looking at him right in his eye. I can't let him go. This is my responsibility. No. In that field, in other people's lives, they have the right to make that choice. And he had made that choice. So I had to take my hands off and step back and watch as this man took his last breath. That still sticks with me to this day. So I cannot imagine what it would feel like to be that family member, hearing that the executive branch, the legislative branch, Congress, all these people are coming in to say, oh no, he's going to live. That would be insane. So like at that level, that's crazy. If I can take my hands off this man and watch, what is Congress doing from a billion miles away? What are they doing?
What is the president doing?
What do you have to say about this? And you're campaigning on it. That's okay, I'm just going to say that's disgusting, and I'm going to pass it off to Infidel.
Infidel, you want to get into a quick word?
Yeah, they're politicizing this, and once again, that's what we're hearing. And you know, you mentioned, Kelly, that the husband finally won, and they were able to. And the truth is I don't think he won either. I mean, he prevailed in what he thought was right, and everyone lost. And unfortunately, even now, you know, a decade later, we're still seeing this family willfully, unfortunately, be used as a pawn, and that's the most unfortunate thing, is that we still haven't been able to let it go. And one last thing, I know we're running short here, but Phoebe, I'm with you. When it's time for me to make that decision, it's time for me to do it, not have someone else to do it. But I also understand that I'm glad that's available for those of us who aren't willing to or aren't able to make that decision. That's, once again, not my choice or not Kevin James's choice to make. Kelly?
In my opinion, any person who is of legal majority should sit down, even if you're like 18 and you never think it's going to happen to you. You should sit down and you should go, hang on a minute, what if I am hit by a bus? You never want to think about it. But do you really want to be spending 50, 60 years in a coma? There was a gentleman in the UK who set a record. He had a motorbike accident at the age of 22. He died, never regaining consciousness, at the age of 97. He spent 55 years in a coma. It can happen to any of us.
There's a lot of things to think about, and a lot of people have a lot of different opinions, and we want to hear some of yours. So put them in the comments below, and if you want to see more of the nonprofits, click right here.